Hey, I'm Michael Dorinda,
And I am Jake Bennett.
and welcome episode something or other of the North Meet South web podcast.
We're very professional over here, everybody. Very, very professional. And this is
I
the
pressed
first time we've
record
done
and
this.
then realized that I didn't even look at what episode of the podcast that we are on.
I think we're on 145, but I think the last time, actually, I think we're on 151. Officially, like 151, which I know sounds weird. But I think that the last time we had our podcast, we recorded our Christmas our Christmas extravaganza one, and realized that we have not versioned those episodes. So, like, officially, if we're talking about the number of episodes we have, this is officially version 151. However, in our numeric numbering, I believe this is probably number
149.
149? Okay. So
Yeah, I just checked.
we'll call
Episode
it 149. Yeah, we'll call it 149. That's fine. How are things
What are you
going, my
doing?
friend?
Yeah, things
What
are
have I
okay.
been doing? I'll
What
tell
have
you what
been
I've been doing.
You always ask
If
what
you're
I do. I never ask what you're doing. So you tell me what you're doing.
I will tell you what I've been doing. I just got the same keyboard that you got. You inspired me. Keychron K11 Pro with the little analog knob and the Alice keyboard layout, and I'm loving it. It's really, really sweet. How do you like yours?
Yeah, it's good. I like the sound.
Has it been
I
a
like
learning
the
curve at
feel.
all?
No, I think it took me probably about 20 minutes to get used to it. I think the main thing was that on the split, it's got two B keys.
Yeah,
And so that
yeah.
was a bit, like, it's fine. I don't think it's actually caused any problems using it, but it was just odd to look down and realize that there were two B keys there. I think the other thing is because it's got the split space bar, I was hitting the function keys. So I just had my hands a little too far over. So it just took, 20 minutes to get it in the right spot, and it's been okay since. So
Yeah,
pretty happy with that one.
And it's like a typing test thing. Like within probably 20 minutes, I'm with you. Like within 20 minutes, I was like 85, which is pretty decent. It's typically where I'm around. However, that was without taking into account all the other things that I do on my keyboard every day that I was not thinking about or accounting for. And when I heard you say you mapped escape to tilde, I was like, why? Like, who uses tilde? Me. All the time, actually.
Yeah, all the time.
Backticks and tilde, you use it every day, multiple times throughout the day. And so
Especially
I
if
did
you're
not
in
realize
GitHub
this.
or Slack or whatever.
Yeah, all the time. And so I did not realize this until I had been using it for a bit. And so I've got some funky, fancy remappings that I would want to talk about too. So, but I want to talk about that B key real quick. So, do you end up using different fingers for B depending on which word you're typing?
Yeah, I think so.
You do? Yeah, you do?
I'm
Okay.
not conscious of it, but yeah, I definitely think that sometimes I'll use the left thumb and sometimes it's the right thumb. So maybe that's why it's there intentionally.
For the letter B, you're saying? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. Yeah, I only ever use my left pointer finger for B. That's the only one I use. Yeah, I know. I think I'm not sure if that's like the official way to do it or whatever. That's how I was taught in school to do it, and so it stuck. But as a result, what actually ends up being cool for me is that other B on the right hand side. I can use that as an extra key. So I've used that as my tilde and escape, or my tilde and my backticks. Yeah,
I think
so
that
just mapped
would
that
take
down there.
more. Yeah, I think that would take more to get used to having the tilt there
It does.
than the pinky. Yeah.
It definitely does. Yeah, for sure. It's like that remapping is a little bit weird. And for those of you who, you obviously can't see the keyboard, but along your keyboard, typically on the left-hand side, you have like on the bottom left, you have either control or function, and then above that shift, and then caps lock, and then tab, and then tilde backticks, and then escape. So on this keyboard, this is a 65% keyboard, and it does not have a function keys row, which means they have to move the escape down to the same row that the number keys are on, which means your tilde backticks is your escape. And so because you don't have that, you have to sort of come up with a way to do that. Like what can you do to replace that? So a couple interesting ways that I've heard it done, and Michael, you do it this way, is I believe you remapped your escape to your tilde backticks, and then what you did is you mapped your caps lock key to escape.
Yeah.
Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah, caps to escape I think is a Vimism. It's because you're always going out of
always.
insert or whatever, so you're always you're hitting escape quite
All
often.
the time, right?
And so the two common ways of doing that in Vim to keep your fingers on the home row is either to remap caps to escape or
Mm-hmm.
to map JJ to escape.
Ah.
But you would only do JJ to escape in Vim as like a normal mode binding.
Right. I wonder if you can do that as a... I don't know. So we'll talk about the firmware and kind of how it does its updates and stuff in a minute here. But it's that would be interesting if you could do sort of like a key chord. I don't know if that's what you'd call it, but like a key chord or a tip tap. They call it tap dance. I think it's sort of like what some of the... Well, there was a certain firmware out there. They have this like idea of tap dance, which is basically a set of keys in combination represents a different type of key.
Right.
And so if you typed JJ, I wonder if it could do escape. That would actually be pretty awesome. If that was the case, I would definitely remap escape to tilde backticks and do JJ for escape. I'll have to check that out. David Hemphill's been a cool resource on this one because he's been all in this world for a long time.
Yeah, you've seen he's trying to get rid of all of those keyboards.
yeah, exactly. So the other thing that I did that was actually the whole reason I got this, if you are like me and you use copy and paste using Command C, Command V, which if you're a Vim user, you don't. But if you are not a Vim user, then you do. Or I would press Command Space all the time to launch Alfred or Raycast or whatever it is that's your little app launcher thing. Or Command tilde or Command Tab to like kind of switch between applications. I don't know. I ended up using Command a lot. But my finger for using Command was my thumb on my left hand. And if you do that motion, your thumb has to wrap under the rest of your hand in order to get there.
Yeah. Yep.
And so that was causing me a lot of pain in my thumb right there, wrapping it underneath all the time, constantly. And so what I wanted to do is to put that Alice keyboard layout, what you get is that split key. You get that split space there. And so instead of having Command be underneath my thumb, what I did is I mapped the left function key, which is right where my thumb sits anyway, to Command. And so that's my Command key now. So now Command C, Command V is very comfortable. It's a very natural position for my hand. But I'm having to figure out some of the other things, like if I have to do like Command Control Shift, that is, it's just a little bit, it's a wider spread, but that's okay. I don't mind the wider spread. It's just I got to get used to it. My hands are quite large anyway. So it's not a stretch for me. It's just an adjustment of trying to figure out, I've got to map my brain back over to that. So I've only been using this keyboard when I'm at work. If I'm using my laptop, I don't. But I've only been using this keyboard for a couple days. But it's already feeling really good, and it's really smooth. I don't remember what kind of switches did you say you got?
I think they're the Gateron Brown switches.
Brown?
So
okay.
they're thunky. Thunky, I think is the word. They're clunk, but they're a soft sound. So
I think those are the ones I got too.
Yeah. The blues and the reds are a lot more clicky. I think the blues are the clicky ones, red are tactile, and these are kind of more of a thunk. I don't know what
But they're so soft. I feel like they activate really easily.
Yeah.
And you don't have to push super far to get them to go. And it's been really great. It's been really enjoyable. So that's been a lot of fun. Just kind of playing around with that. And I actually did have another keyboard before this one, which I don't remember what one it was.
It's a sign you've had too many keyboards.
No, this is the only other keyboard I ever had. But it was a 60%. And the big problem for me with that one was there was no arrow keys. And that was a big pain for me. And so I ended up abandoning it pretty quickly. I just couldn't do it. And so this one's a 65, so it's been really nice. So yeah, I'm enjoying it. And so then the firmware I guess the firmware is kind of what I'm talking about. Like that VIA. Was that a bit of a weird thing for you? So like you customize it through VIA. Have you ever done that before?
Yeah, I mean it's a web thing that I've done,
which is really interesting.
Yeah.
Like so, it's not an application you install. It's a web application.
Yeah, it's some control protocol that's built into the browsers now that you authorize the keyboard basically, so it can't just get in there and start recording your keystrokes, and then you make the changes and it just writes them back to the keyboard, and that way you can take that keyboard. So the thing with using something like carabiner elements or one of those other tools is that you need to set it up on each device, where these things like VIA and QMK, they write the firmware back to the keyboard so that you can pick that keyboard up and take it to any computer and know that your mappings will always be there. I find that was not the case when I used it via Bluetooth, though.
Right. That is correct.
Bluetooth, it doesn't, I guess, support that functionality, but via cable, which is how I've got it set up because it's on my desk most
Same.
of the time, then it's no problem.
Yeah. So it's really interesting because it used to be, I feel like you had to go into GitHub and you'd have to download and install some sort of like, it'd be like Rust or something stupid like that. And then you'd have to map your changes and then you'd have to flash them to your board and all that stuff. And it was just a mess, and it was like you'd be versions behind and it's like, I don't know, your board wasn't supported. I don't know. It was just sort of annoying. And so with this, it's really powerful. Literally any web browser that you're on, you can hook it up to. And yeah, like Michael said, it just authorizes the device. So basically the browser has a USB API, and then it can use that web app to write that firmware, which is incredible. And so anyway, there's lots of help on GitHub as well. Or sorry, not GitHub, Reddit. There's a lot of people who are really into this world. And, some of the things that you're talking about with QMK, some of the functionality that you have from there is available over in VIA. And so it's really interesting. I'm getting into it, not super a ton, but a little bit, just kind of figuring out some of these little things. For me, mostly the key mappings, like the remappings has been enough for me. But they do have like, you can record macros and things like that as well. So you can get onto like, you press your function key, which basically changes your entire keyboard to another layer. And every key can be mapped to something different than it normally would be. So you can say like function and then press G, and you can have function G perform a set of whatever. You could have it be a snippet if you wanted to,
Yeah, the layers are cool.
Yeah, so that's really, really interesting. And the thing is like 6 layers or maybe even more than that, that you can map to. And so you can use the function key to get to one of the layers, or you can use, you can map a different key to get you to a different layer if you wanted to. So just really, really cool stuff. So I've been really enjoying that and just kind of learning about it. So yeah, that's kind of been the journey I've been on. I also got one of those cables that you got like that professional sort of, it's like that curly cable deal. I don't even know what that is. What's the deal with those cables where they hook up all weird and like screw in and crap? What's that about? Is that just an aesthetic?
Yeah, I think it's an aesthetic thing. It's like harkens back to the old days of PS2.
It's like steampunk
connections, I suppose. Yeah. Because it's like USB-C that goes into this thing, which then comes out as USB-C on the other end. So I don't think it needs to be there. You could conceivably just plug in a regular USB-C cable and it would work fine. But it's just the aesthetic thing.
Yeah, so it's like if you take your keyboard with you places or something, instead of having to unplug and replug in all the way from the back of that machine or whatever, you can just sort of, you got the pigtail, whatever, you can unscrew that, pop that out, take that with you, and then the next place you plug in and screw it in, sort of deal. It is kind of cool. I got an orange cable, and when I got it, my kids and my wife were like, "Why'd you get a pink cable?" I'm like, "It's not pink, it's orange." They're like, "That's pink." I'm like, "No, it's orange." They're like, "It's definitely at least coral. It's not orange." I'm like, "Oh, great." This is my son said it was salmon.
One, but
it's
they
salmon.
sent the wrong one. Oh, it's salmon. Well, now we're
I don't know.
Pink.
It's orange and white, but if you look at it, it does look like from a distance, it looks salmon or like pink. So I'm like, "Oh, whatever. I got a pink cable now, so it's fine." My dad would be appalled. Growing up, he never would wear pink, and he thought it was just like, I don't know, it was so funny. People would get him pink on purpose because they knew he didn't like it. It's so funny. So now I have a pink cable. He'll be he'll not talk to me again next time he sees I'm using a pink cable. I don't know. Ridiculous. So anyway, that's been
the Black Rainbow. I think it was. Yeah. Eli.
Oh, is that the one you got?
Yeah, Black Rainbow one.
Oh, that's cool. I did see that one actually. Yeah, that one looked really interesting. So, but yeah, no, that's the journey I'm on right now, and it's been really nice. It's given me some relief, as far as like my hands are concerned, which has been nice. And I think the Alice layout as well is really nice. I've been using a Magic keyboard, like the little Apple Mini Magic keyboard for forever. I mean, ever since I've been using a Mac, pretty much. I've been using that little thing. And so with that, your hands really are just so close together. And like I said, I have like, I'm a tall guy. My hands are like large. And so working on that little keyboard, I think for as long as I have has just sort of, not been great for my hands. So having the ability to spread them out a little bit more has been nice. I will say, however, like I transport my keyboard all over the place because I have an office at like both of our locations, and then I work from home sometimes too, or whatever. And so I have to transport that keyboard on a regular basis. And I feel like such a nerd now because the case that this thing comes in to transport it is almost as big as my laptop bag. It's just huge. And like the end of the day, I'm like, open this thing, unzip it, and like, pack it in there and like carry it out to my car like a briefcase. It's ridiculous. I feel like the biggest nerd in the world, like walking into the house, like I got my backpack and my briefcase keyboard. It's just like, okay, I've gotten there. I'm that guy now.
You're the guy
So
that carries the
I'm
keyboard.
that guy. Yep.
It's,
David
it's
will be proud.
certainly like I didn't get it for the ergonomics perspective. I just got it because like it looked cool,
Kinda
and
fun.
I thought I'd give it a go. I think if you do have like ergonomic issues, or you've got RSI or whatever in the wrist, or sore hands or whatever else, I think it's a good stepping stone.
Yeah.
Just to kind of spread the keys out a little bit, to get your elbows a bit further apart, to get your hands a bit further apart, without going into like an ErgoDox or a Moonlander or any of those like extreme
a Kinesis or whatever,
keyboards, or a Kinesis, yeah. So it's definitely, if it's something that plagues you, this keyboard was, I say only, so obviously only is subjective, but it was like $94, so it wasn't the most expensive keyboard I bought. It's certainly not the cheapest keyboard out there, but I'm hoping that it kind of staves off. Like I think I've talked about, like I had these elbow problems for a few months, and I've been having it treated, but I wonder if like the keyboard was contributing to it not healing.
Sure.
And
yeah.
like I don't want to say since I got this keyboard, but I certainly haven't noticed any issues. Like the elbows have basically gone back to normal now, so now I can ease back into lifting weights again. So we'll see how we go.
Nice. There you go. I would say for me, like some of it did have to do with ergonomics and stuff, but like those Kinesis, those other ones too. The other thing is like, again, those aren't transportable. You can't really transport those. You know what I mean? You're not gonna take that from place to place. You're just
heavy.
You're just not gonna do that. And so,
and they're like way more expensive as well. So you need to commit to that.
they're really expensive, and they're super ugly, which I know sounds so stupid, but that is a thing for me. Like I want my equipment to look nice. Like I like sitting at a desk where I'm like, oh, I like how this looks. Like I'm going to sit at this workspace for 8 hours a day, every day. And I like to look at my desk and be like, oh, that looks nice. And so it's a little thing, but the aesthetics of this keyboard is actually pretty good too. And it's actually a low profile keycap as well. So it's not these massive clunky chunky keycaps either. It still looks really slim, and it has that like cool look where it's like you have like an aluminum frame, and then the switches sit up off the keyboard, and then you have these low profile caps, and so it has a little gap between them, and it looks really cool. And so, if you're curious what it looks like, Keychron K11 Pro. And it's got the analog knob, which is really cool. It's a totally dumb thing, but it actually is really useful. I use it for the volume and then for the brightness as well. You can turn the brightness if you get into that function layer, and then turn that little thing, it rolls the brightness. You can do it to like scan through, songs or scroll down a page. You could do all sorts of cool stuff with it. So it's really fun. I think you could also do it like if you're in a particular like, I know that you can use it to like zoom in and out as well, which I think as a like video editor sort of deal, if you've ever been into like a video and you need to like expand or collapse the timeline a little bit, I know some people will use that analog knob to do that, which is kind of cool too. So all sorts of fun little things you can do with it. So it's more like a little hobby thing for me, even more than it is a necessity. But it's been good, especially for the pain in my hands. It's definitely helped. So it's been fun. Yep. Work-wise though, we've been making a lot of progress, and here's what I will say. How do I want to say this? I have not talked about this really much because I am definitely a huge Nova fan. Like I love Nova. We use it in every app, right? David, you're my man. I love Nova. I will never not use Nova. But there are some things that I can't use it for that I use Filament for. And so I've not said anything about Filament because I don't want to make it feel like I'm abandoning Nova, because I'm definitely not. But I use a lot of Filament stuff in one particular app that we have, and it's been really helpful. So we made the switch from View to Livewire fully probably a month ago, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And previous to that, we've been using Livewire, but we still had some Vue components sticking around us. We finally just said, okay, for this particular section, we're going to just abandon Vue completely, just get it out of here. And so we've been using Filament and Livewire pretty consistently. And I think what it is for me is it provides some things that I don't want to have to do on my own or have to maintain on my own. Like I get a consistent slide over, modal, these actions that submit forms and handle validation for me and handle submitting to the backend and closing the modal after it's done and showing loading spinners and all that stuff just comes out of the box, which has been really nice. And all of the form stuff, and it feels Nova-esque. I think it would be a mistake to say that they didn't borrow some of that functionality and that API from Nova. I think that's definitely the case. I think David and Taylor sort of, I don't know if they invented it, but they definitely perfected it. Like came up with a really good API for developers to use to generate these forms with this fluent interface and all that stuff. And Filament definitely borrowed that, so it feels familiar. It feels like home, and so it's been really pleasant to work with, and we've been able to be really productive on it because I don't have to reinvent the wheel every time. There's documentation, so it's not like I'm inventing my own thing. If my guys have a question, they just go read the docs on Filament, right? Which is good. And it's under active development as well, which is helpful. So like there's new things coming out on a regular basis. Some of the challenges that we've faced with like CSV imports or CSV exports. We were just talking about this on Laravel News last week. Some of the things they've come out with the recently navigation stuff. Yeah. So it's interesting. It's a world that we're definitely dipping our toes into and getting into now. I don't know that I'm the typical user. Like we're not using it for admin panels is what I guess what I'm saying. Like admin panels, I'm still fully in Nova world. But for front end components, that's not really where Nova shines, right? Nova doesn't really do that.
Right.
And so Filament, sort of the Filament admin components that they built do ship to the front end. And you talked about this on Laravel News last time we were talking as well. You said that's literally that exact same thing. And so that's the way in which we're using it, and it's been good. I'm liking it. So
yeah, it's certainly an interesting thing. I think if you're seeing Filament as like just a free version of Nova, and that's all you're going to use it for, then obviously make the financial decision there. Are you going to pay the licensing and the active development, like knowing that it's going to keep going? If you know that you need to put some of that stuff into the hands of your application users, not just as an admin panel, then yeah, as you say, Filament certainly makes sense. I'd like to see some more content for it. Like I know that there's talk about it, and we had a couple of articles on Laravel News last week, but there's not that I've noticed people going out there and talking about it, showing it off, showing the kinds of things that they're doing with it, where it's being used, conference talks, that kind of stuff. It'd be cool to see. Like I think it certainly looks like it's got a big utilization footprint in the Laravel ecosystem. It would be cool to see like the kinds of things people are doing with it, because I think it's mature enough. It's been around for a while. It's
version 3 now. Yeah, like 3.2. So
yeah, so it's mature, it's stable, as you say, it's actively developed, and it's a pleasure. Like if you're in a position where you don't have a team that's designing your application, and you just want to like go with some boilerplate type stuff that you can style as you need, but that largely it's available, then it's certainly worth a look, I think. And it'd be cool. Hopefully this year, we'll see some more content about it.
Yeah, the nice thing too is that it's using TallStack, so it's using Tailwind as well. So if I want to break out of their conventions, most of their things allow me to do so, right? I can use Tailwind styles to just change a component that they have to however I want it to be. Also, I just like using Livewire in general too. So like not everything on the page that we have is Filament. There are plenty of just plain Livewire components. But if, for example, I want one of my Livewire components to contain a modal, well, all I do is just throw a Filament modal in there and I'm done. You know what I mean? It's just done. It's a pre-built component that I don't have to think about, worry about, build myself, maintain, none of that stuff. And so it's just handy, right? It's just kind of sprinkling here and there. But I think the thing, definitely Filament is great for, what I will say Filament is great for is like those slide overs and those forms. Great. Totally fine. If there's something outside of that I want to do, I'm not using Filament, I'm using Livewire. Like if there's something custom, it's always just Livewire. You could try and like shoehorn Filament into some of that stuff, but it can be painful.
Yeah.
Again, using some of the
I think
Filament
knowing the
components,
boundaries
like,
is important.
yeah, good point. Yeah, and so there's also some goofy things we had to do, like if I have an action, a Filament action that I'm rendering, every time I display that on the page, I'm rendering a ton of stuff, right? It's the whole modal, it's the whole slide over, it's the whole thing, and I'm like, I don't really want to do that 10 times on this page. So I had to figure out a way to open up one of those slide overs or those modals from another place on the page. And that was a whole funky mess. We figured it out. It works now, but I had to hijack and override some things, and we've got our own convention now for how we do that. So it's not like there hasn't been bumps along the way, but after we figured some of that out, then it's working fine. So yeah, I mean, nothing's perfect. It's working well enough for us though, and we're actually still on Filament 2. Or no, I take it back. I'm sorry. We're on the Filament 3 beta, but we have not yet gotten to the Filament 3 release. So yeah,
cool.
That's where we're at.
Yeah,
that's kind of what we're working on right now.
I hear about this stuff, and I don't really get much opportunity to play with it because we've gone off the JavaScript deep end, and I don't have really a lot to do with our front end at the moment, but it's all React based. I'm not using inertia. Like they're all federated modules that like we build them and we can publish them, and they just end up in other, like they're front end components that are like self-contained in that they talk to specific API endpoints and they do all the interactivity, but we can like pick up the components that we've built, publish them, and then they go into another system like another CRM, and they just appear in that other CRM, and they can be styled if they need to be for that CRM, but like we control all the code. So if we need to make changes, we can just make the changes, kind of thing. So it's an interesting approach, but it's all React, and I just don't want to learn it.
Jump into that world.
And fortunately,
right.
I don't have to. Like, I think there was a blog post that did the rounds last week or the week before that. It was talking about, some senior person within the React community that has just like they're not happy with React the way, like it's harder to learn React now than like it's ever been, because there's just so much stuff, and there's not. Like, don't get me wrong, it's powerful and it's used by a lot of stuff and it enables a lot of stuff, but it's just, it's ugly to look at, which I know is a totally subjective measure, but it just adds layers of complexity. Like, it's blown out our build time now as well for deploys and things like that. We just got all of the CI stuff down, but now we've got this build step in there to build out all of the React stuff and do all the the build step, or the npm installs and the build step, and like compiling all the types and building out all of the objects and all that, and like it just adds literal minutes to the build step again. So I don't know, I have probably unfounded complaints, but I'm just glad that I get to continue doing the stuff that I'm doing on the back end and making the back end great, or as great as it can be given the state of the world that it lives in.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't have like hardly any experience in React. I mean, like very, very little. And so my experience in that world is just about none. But I'm with you. Like I feel like I'm such an old man. It's like I don't really care to learn it if I don't have to. If I have to learn it, I would. I really would. And I'm sure it would be fine. But it's just not something like I'm being forced to do. And I'm kind of past the point of learning some of those things just for fun. I know there's a lot of other things that I can learn that I would be able to use in the day-to-day. And so React just isn't on that list. But I mean, it sounds interesting, like the things that you're talking about, these federated modules and stuff like that. And maybe it is the right choice.
Well, it's certainly the right choice for us.
Yeah.
Because of what we need to do. If it was not for the fact that we needed to publish our stuff into third-party CRMs, it would be Livewire all the way, baby. Like, there is nothing so fancy in any of our app that we need, all of the power and the weight that React provides. Nothing that we couldn't just sprinkle some Alpine in and be done with it, or just use Livewire to handle that kind of stuff. But because of what we need to do and how we need to do it, like it just made sense. And especially because the CRM that we're publishing into is React based as well, it just made sense to fit in with their workflows. But yeah.
Yep, that sounds about right. I'm trying to think of anything else that we have that we've been working on, or challenges that I've run into. There was something specific I was going to ask you about. Give me just a second to think about it.
While you're thinking, we finally did our snowflakes. We merged that in.
Oh, I know what it was. Sorry, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah,
we,
I think we did talk about that last time, that all the snowflake stuff is merged, and we have kind of been waiting for the last week or so or like the other team responsible for the CRM to be ready to handle all of the updates. I will say that it is a very slow process updating hundreds of thousands of records across dozens of tables to use snowflakes.
Like, how slow are we talking?
Like, did a migration earlier today that was like 15,000 records that took probably about 30 minutes, and that was just one table.
Oh wow, really? 15,000? It took 30 minutes? Jeez.
Because we have to go
slow.
record by record, right? So we're using MySQL cursors and things like that, but we have to select the record, get the current ID, generate a new snowflake, update the ID, write that to a file. Like, this is like the audit trail that we went from this ID to this ID. We have to do this for every single table. Any table that has got foreign key
relational stuff,
constraints and relations, like, it has to then go and cascade all those updates to all of those other places. So, that adds some overhead,
that's a lot
as well.
Totally.
And so, it adds up. We thought, we basically scheduled out, we would migrate one tenant, 2 snowflakes per day for the next week, essentially, because that's just how.
Are you on pace?
This is the hard part.
You on pace with that?
Yeah, pretty much.
That's
we
good.
started, today is Wednesday. So we started late Monday. We did one on Monday, one yesterday. So we're tracking. It's just watching it every now and then.
Yeah.
There's a deploy that like nukes that that release. So
sure.
And because we release so frequently, it's not a problem if a release happens. It's if 3 releases happens and we pop like the end release off and it tries to access code that is now being removed from the file system.
Yeah. Yep. I know what it was I was going to ask you about. You said that you guys are like in like there we're back. It was about, like, you said that you guys entered like a new like cycle. Like I think it started with a K. What did you guys call that? What do you call those? It wasn't KPI.
KPI. We talked about, like, not that we're in a new cycle, but that we have started. 12 months ago we did OKRs, and this year we're doing
OKR.
KPIs.
Yeah. So what is an OKR?
So OKRs are objectives and key results, and they're just like broad strokes where the business sets usually 3 objectives that they want to achieve.
Like strategic priorities.
Strategic priorities, yep. And then you break that down into key results. Like, these are the things we're going to do and how they align with those objectives. And then that kind of cascades down throughout the organization to like the lowest levels.
Gotcha.
But this year we kind of tacked on KPIs on top of it. So we're doing OKRs and KPIs, and it's just, I don't want to talk about it because it upsets me, but it's,
I know.
It makes sense. I totally get it from a whole of business perspective, in that, they have specific dollar amounts, of loans that they want to settle and things like that. And it makes sense that you would say, I'm going to close this many deals, or, I'm going to close this value in deals every month or whatever. And you can actually track that quite easily.
Sure.
For us as a technology team, it's much more difficult to kind of set those metrics, because a lot of what we're doing is to facilitate and like move the business towards that. So we don't really get to say like, we're going to do this specific thing, which like helps channel this many settlements in a month, right? It's just, what does the business want us to work on? And so, we have to think about it a little bit more creatively in terms of, are we going to do like bugs per release, or, releases per whatever, or,
sure,
how much are we committing? Like, we commit to deliver X% of agreed scope in a window of time, and things like looking at things that we can actually measure
Yeah.
in some meaningful way. Because all of the other stuff in any tech team, product team that I've worked in, it's very difficult to come up with anything that kind of fits those objectives, that is, things that we can do that we can be then measured on. You know, from my perspective, it's just wake up every day. Is the stuff that I'm working on today pushing us to, like, is it the right thing to work on? Okay, keep working on it. Is it pushing us towards our goals, kind of thing? It's not really.
It's hard because like developer productivity is it can be very subjective, right? Like you said, it's very difficult to come up with an objective measure for that. But like you can sort of at the end of a day, you can go be like, okay, this person worked this many hours. Let's go look at the code they wrote. And you can kind of just smell test it and be like, does that make sense? Like, is that a sufficient amount of code to have written in that period of time? And again, it's still, even at that point, it's still subjective because you don't know the thought process of the trade-offs of the bugs they had that they hit along the way in writing that code, or if they've already refactored it. Used to be twice that size and they refactored it down to really nice, neat, really whatever. So that's hard. That's hard to do. And so I was actually listening to this talk. I think it was Erin Meyer was her name. And she was talking about the culture at Netflix. I'm not going to do a great job on it, but I won't try and distill the whole thing. But she said, like, one of the things they do when they were evaluating team members, they really wanted to have really high talent density, right? Meaning they wanted to have only like all-stars on their team. And so they said once every 6 months or whatever, they would do this. Can't remember what they called it. But they would basically do this thought exercise where a leader of a team would say, like, go through each person on the team and say, like, I've got this guy Fritz, and he's a really decent guy. He's a nice person. He comes, he's consistent. He shows up on time, but he's just not there. Like, he can't hit, he can't hit those KPIs, right? He can't hit those metrics. Like, he just never really quite makes it. He's just the slowest person on the team. You know what I mean? He's that guy.
Yeah.
And so, going through the thought exercise of being like, if Fritz came to me and said today, hey, I've got a situation, I'm not going to be able to work here anymore, would you be relieved, or would you do everything you could do to keep that person? And if you would be relieved that they're not there anymore, that's probably an indication that you should not have them on the team, which is a harsh reality. But it's like, if you've done everything you can do to coach them up and help them get there and they're just not there, it's like, it's probably okay to let them not be there anymore. And they say, like, what did they say? If you want to be able to predict the success of a team, you don't look at its highest performing members, you look at its lowest performing members, because they're going to drag the team down. Like, success is contagious, but so is losing, right?
Yeah.
And so, it's just that exercise. But really, you have to, from your leadership team, you have to have a lot of trust in order to be able to make those types of decisions without being able to point to a KPI and say, see, right here, this is why I'm letting this person go. It's, like I said, it's just so subjective. So anyway, I don't know if that's helpful or not, but it is tough to write KPIs for developers. I have the same exact problem. Our KPIs end up being things like, you need to be present in the Teams channels, in the Slack channels, and, be available to respond to questions within, whatever. You need to participate in channel discussions. You need to have thoughtful questions for if you have a problem with the pull request that you can't figure out, right? You need to have tried things, whatever, that sort of stuff. But those are just like behavior things. Those aren't necessarily
they're hard to
like
measure as well.
Right. They are. The nice thing is, though, they are things that you can say, listen, this is what we agreed to, and you're not doing this. So that's something we need to work on. That's one advantage, I suppose. If you've all agreed on these are the things we're going to try and do, and you're not doing that as a team member, then let's try and do better at that. I guess that's the only advantage you have.
Yeah,
So,
there's certainly ways of doing it. But going back to like 4 hours of my time or 2 hours of my time is different to a more inexperienced person's 4 hours and 2 hours. Like, I can do a lot more in 4 hours than an experienced person can do.
Yeah.
And that's just the nature of experience. Like, how do we do that? Am I expected to do 4 times as much because of that? Like, you can't just take, okay, this is the baseline and you're, 2x the baseline, so we're expecting twice the output. It's like, well, no, because a lot of my time is spent reviewing code, reading code, thinking about code, like all of that kind of stuff that is not tangible. It's like, okay, I spent 2 hours thinking about this and 15 minutes writing it.
Yeah.
To make sure that like that 15 minutes spent writing it, testing it, means that we don't have to look at this again in 6 months because we've thought about how it should function and things like that, which a less experienced person won't necessarily do. They'll just write the code to make the thing do the thing that they needed to do in the moment and then ship it and done. So it's an interesting thing that, I think broadly speaking, my team is in alignment on it. It's just how do we, there's an expectation that there's buy-in. It's like, it's not that we don't buy in. It's just that it's impractical.
Yeah. Yep. I hear all that you're saying. All that stuff makes sense and there's similar pain points for me. So I wish I had better solutions for you to offer.
Yeah.
But we're still, we've done that. We did that a while ago and we're still in the same boat. It's sort of like, the only thing we've been able to do is kind of point to them and say like, those are the agreements we've made and let's try and do that. But you can't, like, number of lines written, that's a bunch of garbage. You can't do that. You can't do that. So anyway, well, dude, that's all I've got for today. If you've got anything else you want to talk about, welcome to do so. Otherwise, I think we can wrap this one up.
Let's do it.
Okay, this was episode 149. I think is what we called it. 149. Show notes of this episode at northmeetsouth.audio/149. Hit us up on Twitter at Jacob Bennett, at Michael Dorindo, or at North South Audio. And of course, if you like the show, please rate it up in your podcatcher of choice. 5 stars would be amazing. Until next time, folks, we'll see ya.
See you.